just wanted to make a comment. What I find fascinating as I was listening to you explaining process theology, the background, the scientific background that was going on historically in Whitehead's own life. Because he went from Einstein was the last classical physicist, and then he transitioned into the quantum mechanical world, a world of a set of laws that allow probability. I say it's a difference. You look at a picture. If you look at a picture in a newspaper, you normally think it's continuous. You look closely, it's little dots. And that's a you see little dots make up the picture. That's a transition in many ways from classical physics to quantum mechanics. Yet, there's another great scientific revolution that's taken place in the latter half of the 20th century, and that's the standard model of particle physics. And that's the combination of general relativity with quantum mechanics. That's the one that's been able to predict what goes on at the subatomic level, can explain the evolution of the universe.
How does this connect to process theology?
I think it's important that theology has to keep up with science. I think your last comment is right, but I think science is so far gone beyond where Whitehead was in the world he lived in.
Hopefully.
It makes yes, but I remember in the hallways once, Burt Richter, who shared the Nobel Prize with Sam Ting, once made the comment, theoretical physics today is borrowing on theology. It's coming too much like theology. And I can think of an example here. This would be an area where theologians should be talking to forefront physicists. The idea of the Higgs field, where people discovered the Higgs boson, is basically a universal field that permeates everything. Yet it's disturbance in that field from which matter arises. If you are a theologian, this is God, and we are a disturbance somewhat. We are all connected to God. In other words, you could think of us as just a partial reflection. We're a filter, as you were, like a red filter. Only that's through red light. Our bodies are filters, and we're each just a partial representation of God. I mean, I'm just saying this is how I think it would be helpful. Theology today, we're talking to like people in the forefront sciences.
Science
and it's done more systematically.
Science can always be a source of new metaphors for theology, but you don't want to make a direct leap from physics into theology.
Yes, but the point is when here's Whitehead's calling God beauty. Well, as soon as I heard that, well, we should all be studying math because Dirac knew his equations were right, but it predicted a particle that couldn't exist, the positron, which was eventually discovered. He said his things were too beautiful. I mean, my point is I think there needs to be a lot more dialogue between the sciences and theology, and I think they're really not that much different. But I don't hear where science is today is not, there's a lot more going on.
I've been involved in science and theology discussions for almost 40 years now, and what I found is that if you don't have a framework, a conceptual framework, a philosophical framework within which to articulate the connections between science and theology, you end up doing what I call physico-theology, or you end up reducing physics itself to a kind of worldview. And this is what's happening all over the place. Every week a new book comes out by some quantum physicist or whatever, telling us that we now have discovered ultimate reality. Max Tegmark at MIT just came out with a book called The Mathematical Universe, and the subtitle is My Search for Ultimate Reality. Physics is not in the business of giving us ultimate reality, or it shouldn't be. Whenever physics does that, then we're into a new kind of theology, not physics, or a new kind of worldview, but not physics. But anyway, your point is well taken.
I think Whitehead would be comfortable with that because he was the great mathematical logician of the 20th century. He even wore out Bertrand Russell's brain. And it was the same after working on the Tractatus with Whitehead. And one of the essays that's a favorite of mine is his essay on mathematics and the good in science and philosophy, where he goes into this kind of question. It goes back to the Platonic question. There's more Plato left in Whitehead than John has left you thinking Plato. He's the greatest Platonist of the 20th century.
Last week, a few weeks ago, that Whitehead himself said that all of Western philosophy is a series of footnotes to Plato.
Yeah. But I want to ask you just about one piece of the adventure you left out, which relates to
Just
religion.
one?
Which is peace. And that chapter in Adventure Ideas always struck me as being written by a mystic who was also a metaphysician. Can you say something about that?
Yes, yes indeed. And we can go back to that description he gives of adventure and connected to that. If the adventure toward beauty reaches its ideal destiny as far as each one of us is concerned, the feeling that should produce is one of peace. But he differentiates peace from what he calls anesthesia. Anesthesia is peace's bastard substitute. There's an interesting poem by Hopkins that connects peace and patience as well. But peace is the affective tone of what happens when you have a maximum integration of novelty and order with novelty. Most of the time we fall short of that, and we settle for monotony instead of beauty. And we build our whole lives around that. We call it peace, but it's really anesthesia because it fails to integrate into itself the nuance, the novelty, the diversity that you would have to have something truly beautiful and to have the right kind of reaction to it. So from that point of view, peace and beauty are correlative notions. Did you want to add?
I just want to add that he sees that as peace is the motive power that religion gives to history. Religion is kind of, if you will, the repository of that experience of peace, and that's how it moves.
Idealization.
And how it helps move along the adventures of ideas. It's
We
the
talk
crown,
about the
crowning
inspiration,
position.
God is the inspiration
Right.
of the universe, that's part of it.
There's that great
Thank you.
expression for God, reserves of beauty.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
If you have a meeting today of Catholic and Protestant theologians, how widely accepted is process theology among them?
Among theologians in
Among
general,
theologians,
hardly
Christian.
any. Very few Catholics are into process theology, and only a minority of Protestants are, as far as I've been able to tell.
So if they're not processed, then it's traditional theology. Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
are there other
just
schools?
statistically speaking, over half of the non-Catholic Christians in the United States reject evolution, reject
So they
biology.
can't begin to discuss
So
it.
there's no point even starting to talk about process thought with that majority.
Mhm.
And of the remaining 40%, only a minority have the training philosophically and education to do process theology. So, but don't give up. Sooner or later, if it's a good idea, as Teilhard says, it's going to survive.
When you said Whitehead admitted there was a God, but after death he didn't get too involved with that. When he died, he was laid out, all dressed up, no place to go.
Whitehead or Teilhard?
Whitehead, I mean, all dressed up, no place to
Well,
go.
let's say that the events that made up his life were still hanging around somewhere in God's consequent region.